Once upon a time, a 22-year-old Bria went to go see a new dentist for the first time. I know, right? Seems unrelated to what you're here for, but I promise it all connects. I went to go see a new dentist for the first time, and this person had never seen me or the inside of my mouth before, and she said, "Oh my goodness, you have such large taste buds. I bet you taste things really sensitively." And I was like, girl, what? No, I don't know. I've been tasting things my whole life. I didn't notice anything unique or different about it. And then she said, well, when you were a child, did you struggle with vegetables or do you struggle with not eating certain foods? And I'm like, actually, yeah, I don't drink coffee. It's a little bit too much for me. And I did struggle as a child with broccoli and just different vegetables. I just couldn't stand the taste of them. And she's like, well, it wasn't your fault. It's because you had big taste buds. And upon hearing this news, I told one of my coworkers and she said, oh my God, you should become a sommelier. And I was like, what does that word mean? What is a sommelier? And I came to find out that a sommelier is a wine expert. It would be really, really cool to understand A, the intricacies of wine. I love wine. And B, most importantly, how I can make the food I already eat 1,000 times more tasty. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about wine pairings. Like, they bring so much more life and so much more joy and so much more elevation to a meal when done thoughtfully and properly. And so I began my sommelier journey that has led me many years later to being in front of all of you guys today. Welcome to Sommeliaide, your tastemaker for every little thing. I am Bria, and today we're talking about the reason why I wanted to become a sommelier in the first place, pairings. We're gonna do charcuterie pairings, we're gonna talk about dinner pairings, we're gonna talk about dessert pairings, and then we're gonna talk about the things that I have learned over the past few years at how to best pair wine with your meal. So let's dive right into it. Let's start with just some general advice when it comes to pairings. So there are 4 different ways I want us to think about pairings. You can think of pairings as matches, you think of wine pairings as complements, and you can think of wine pairings as contrast, and finally you can think of wine pairings in terms of like your perception of taste. And I'm gonna get into all 4 of those things in a second. So the first one, matches. So they have the same, what grows together goes together, and by that they mean if you're at an Italian restaurant, you're gonna wanna pick a wine that is also Italian in nature to start. These are just basic pairings. Oh, and caveat, please remember that everything I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt and know that it is your meal, it is your palate. At the end of the day, you know what's best for what you are eating. These are just some creative ways that I've found that have elevated my different eating experiences by knowing them, and also makes me grateful that I became a sommelier to have a really nuanced understanding of these things, because honestly, it makes my eating experiences that much better. But that's me personally, that's not necessarily you. So please do whatever is best for you. I'm not telling you what to do or how to eat. Alrighty, with that in mind, let's dive right into it. There's this saying that people use, what grows together goes together. And another way I think of that is just basically matching. Matching your food country of origin with your wine's country of origin. So if you're at an Italian restaurant, order Italian wine. If you're at a Greek restaurant, order Greek wine. If you're at a French restaurant, order French wine. If you are eating German food that day, order a German wine. I think you guys are getting it. Matching the country of origin of your meal with the country of origin of your wine is almost always a really great way to go to get a really, really nice pairing. Something about the country, the land, the flavors of the land that are local there, it just is a really great way to make sure that you're getting the best possible meal you can, in my experience. Another way that you wanna match is intensity. So if you're having a really, really rich meal, so like a really rich steak, you're gonna wanna pair that with a really rich wine. So like Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance, is an incredibly rich wine. Very, very rich, very, very delicious. But on the flip side, if you're having like a really light salad or like a really, really soft fish, like a white fish, you're gonna wanna pair the delicacy of that meal with a delicate wine. So, you know, something real demure, something real mindful, something real cutesy, something like a nice Riesling or something light, so that you can pair your meal with the right appropriate amount of intensity so that one thing is not overpowering the other. So that's my matching advice, make sure that it matches. Next, actually, I'm gonna flip it up a little bit and I'm gonna do contrast next instead of complements. So contrast is literally the complete opposite of matching. Instead of saying, hey, let's match the flavors of the meal, let's match the countries, contrast is taking advantage of the fact that opposites can attract sometimes. Like something that comes to mind in like salads that I really like, I find all the really delicious salads from Sweetgreen or wherever you get them, they really, really play with contrast. They have citrusy notes from the dressing and really bitter notes from the vegetables or the nuts that they include, but a really nice salad typically really plays with those textures and contrast in a way that really makes it a compelling meal. You can do the exact same thing with wine and food. So something that comes to mind is like a really citrusy beer with like a burrata cheese. Something like unexpected, you wouldn't necessarily think of like a German beer with burrata cheese, but the textures are so different. One's so bright, the other's so like sultry. They create an interesting contrast. It makes it interesting and tasty to taste. So think about these types of things where you might have unexpected contrast in your meal, and that'll create a really lovely experience for you as well. Next up is complimenting. So the example that comes to mind for me is that if you're drinking a wine that has notes of cherry and you're having a meal that has like a cherry sauce in it, hey, these things might complement each other really, really well. They might pull out, the wine might pull out the cherry notes in the food, and the food may pull out the cherry notes in the wine. This is a great example of foods complementing each other so that you can have the best possible experience with the meal. And that goes for every taste. Cherry is just an example, but I love that one. That one has taken me far. Whenever I read like the tasting notes in the books, or I Google like, oh, I want this particular wine, what does it actually taste like? It's just such a great way to make sure that you're getting the best possible meal you can. So keep that in your back pocket. And finally, the fourth one, food and taste. This is about your tongue's perception of taste. And what I mean by that is, think about when you brush your teeth and then you go and you like have a glass of water or have a fruit or something, or maybe you drink a lot of water before having fruit. You'll notice the fruit doesn't taste the same, or the orange juice tastes nasty because you've got the residual taste of toothpaste or water or something else in your tongue. Why is that? That's because the order in which you enjoy this food matters, and that as you eat your food, the last thing you ate is gonna impact the next thing you ate. So that's what I call like your tongue's perception of taste. And there's 4 different things that I want you guys to know about perception of taste, and it has to do with salt, fat, sugar, and spice. A little bit of salt makes wine in general taste smoother, but too much salt can make at least red wines feel much, much more harsher. It's something about the tannins in the wine, but just be careful when it comes to ingesting salt while you're having your meal, because salt, again, makes wine taste smoother, but too much salt or overly salty meals, like things like chitlins or something, can make red wines feel really, really harsh. So keep that in mind. The next thing is fat. Fatty foods like steak or cheese, they make the red wines at least taste softer, and red wines help cut through the richness of fast food, which is why fatty foods and really tannic wines like Cabernet Sauvignon really go well together. They kind of balance each other out throughout the eating process. Next thing is sugar. Sweet things really need sweet wines. We're gonna talk about this in the dessert section a little bit more, but if the food is sweet but the wine is not, the wine is gonna taste bitter or dry, even though it may not actually be bitter or dry if you're not having it with something that complements it, you know, but if you're having a sweet wine and the food is also not sweet, the wine will not taste the best that it can. So keep that in mind as well. And finally, spicy. Spicy food makes alcohol in general just really feel strong in your tongue. So wines with a little bit of sweetness like Riesling or a lower alcohol content helps cool down or balance out the spice and helps it make it a lot more tolerable and even fun experience for you. If you're a person like me who loves spicy foods, but like sometimes you're really feeling the heat, if you pair that not with a glass of milk, but with like a really sweet wine, it'll help balance out the taste a little bit more. Those are 4 different things I want you guys to keep in mind as like general advice for when it comes to tasting a meal to make it like the best it possibly can. So next up we've got charcuteries. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some charcuterie pairings that I have loved over the years, or just some general advice. So if you are unfamiliar with what a charcuterie board is, it is a platter of different actually, this is important. Let me clarify. A charcuterie board is a platter of dried meats. That is what a charcuterie is. And sometimes people add, in addition to dried meats, cheeses, fruits, dried nuts, all sorts of fun and yummy things to snack on when you are tasting wines, or really just a pre-meal snacky snack. I love them. But a lot of people call charcuterie boards, or rather, a lot of people call cheese boards charcuterie boards. They think of the cheese and all that and they think it's a charcuterie, but charcuterie boards is a name specific to the dried meats on the platter. On the flip side, cheese boards are specific to cheese on the platter. So you see them a lot on like wood planks and things. I think many of us have seen or experienced charcuterie boards before, but they're really delicious and a great way to like graze if you're having a movie night or something really cute. I've had a lot of my best charcuterie boards at wine tastings, and they really are just such a delicious and lovely way to bring out the flavors of the wine that you're tasting, and also just snack before you have your main meal. I love them. Anyway, That is what a charcuterie board is versus a cheese board, and whether you are serving a cheese board or a charcuterie board, here's some fun little tips that I've liked to help like elevate the experience a little bit more. So an example is like a soft cheese, like a brie or a goat cheese in champagne. The bubbles cut through the creaminess really, really interestingly and well, and it complements. And a reason why a lot of these wineries put out charcuteries with their meal is because the snacks or the flavors that you're tasting, whether that's dried apricots, dried cherries, I don't know, mango, whatever they are whatever they are laying out for you to taste alongside the wine, going back to what we talked about earlier, complements the wine to really bring out individual flavors. Again, this is some general advice. Outside of that, I think you guys understand the concept, so you can take it and run with it and create your own beautiful pairings and complements or matches or whatever. But yeah. As I said, soft cheese, which means like brie cheese, goat cheese, whatever, and champagne, the bubbles cut through the creaminess really, really perfectly. It tastes really good and it feels really cool in your mouth. Another like aged cheese, so that's Gouda or cheddar, really goes well with surprisingly like a whiskey or a red wine. So like the smoky, nutty flavors of the whiskey bring out the best in the different aged cheese. And then finally, the salty meats, if you have a charcuterie, the prosciutto or a salami, really go well with things like rosés, really dry rosés, and even a Negroni, if you are interested in tasting it. Going back to my episode where I talked about what that means, a Negroni Spagliato. But yeah, it works beautifully with the charcuterie. So those are like 3 general like tips and tricks that I use for my charcuteries when I build them, just trying to really build the texture palette into it. But again, a lot of these wineries serve these beautiful charcuteries because they bring out the best in the wines. And it's just something that you can consider as you make your own charcuterie. But really, as I said earlier, do you. I know whatever you choose is best for you, so love that. Alrighty, next up we have dinner, so pairings for dinner. So have you ever sat down at a really fancy restaurant and they hand you literally a small textbook full of wines and they say, okay, let me know what you want. And you're thinking to yourself, what on earth do I do with the small textbook of wines? I know I certainly thought that before I got my Sommelier certification, like what the heck am I supposed to do with this book? But now you've got me and I'm gonna tell you. So we're gonna follow the principles that I laid out for you earlier. We're gonna follow either matching whatever you're thinking about tasting with the wine. We're going to think about contrast. So whether, like for instance, if you are at an Italian restaurant, once again, you see an Italian wine on the table, you see they have like 40 Italian wines. You can do a quick Google and see like what taste or what to do, like what the what is. But if this place has a sommelier on staff, what I often do is I ask, hey, like, what do you like? What's best? What would you recommend as a complement to the meal? I'm thinking about this, or this. What do you recommend as a complement to that? That has also served me incredibly well over the years because usually the sommelier is super excited to talk about what might work well for what works or what's really popular with other customers. So I found that to be very helpful in my dining experiences to ask the question. But I advise you to do the same because it is a little bit overwhelming. Like I know most of us just go and close our eyes and pick. And to be perfectly honest with you, you will never know what these wines taste like because you know, a lot of us don't taste, thousands and thousands and thousands of wines. So you're not gonna really know what it tastes like. And honestly, sometimes you're just doing your best bet. I know speaking for myself, I'm just doing the best that I can, but I've also had a lot of really good luck following the country of origin, thinking about the meal that I'm gonna have, thinking about the meal the rest of the table is going to order if we're ordering by the bottle. Because again, you don't really know what it's gonna taste like unless you open that bottle, and every bottle is gonna taste a little bit different. So again, you're really just doing the best that you can, trying to figure out what's gonna taste good, but follow the guidance, the matches, the complements, the contrast, and then just think about how different reactions may be inside of your tongue based on what you're eating. With that in mind, what I almost always do when I go to these fancy restaurants is I get a really citric glass of sparkling wine, whether that's like a sparkling rosé that has really strong citrus notes from Italy or from France. I just do my best to use the sparkling wine as the first thing I have as a palate cleanser so that my tongue is now really prepared to eat as clearly as possible. And that served me really well too, to make sure I'm having like a fresh plate, a fresh slate. And also, fun fact, I learned this in my sommelier certification, sparkling water is what people use to clear their palate between wine. So if you are studying to become a sommelier, let's say you're doing the blind taste test or whatever, you have to study the way things taste in your mouth to be able to pass the test. What people do is they study for the test instead of like drinking the wine and spitting it and drinking it and spitting it because your tongue can get confused. What they do is they use a little bit of sparkling water to swish in their mouths and then either swallow or spit, it's up to them. But yeah, that's a fun little fact about sparkling wines. Fun fact about sparkling water, excuse me. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. My best advice for you for dinner is to, again, follow the matching guidance, the complement guidance, the contrast guidance, and just make your best assessment based on what you want to eat. And just remember, it's never gonna be perfect, but you can get pretty close oftentimes. So that's my advice for dinner. For dessert, however, dessert is, you always want your wine for dessert to be sweeter than your actual dessert. So usually on these, in these restaurants, they have a dessert wine menu, which has a lot of super duper sweet wines like Rieslings and sweeter. If the food is sweet, but the wine is not sweet, the wine is gonna taste bitter and dry, and that's the opposite of what you want. So when you're having something super sweet like a dessert, you gotta go really, really on the high end when it comes to the sweetness of your meal. Alrighty, y'all, before I go, I wanna give you guys some other really fun pairings that I found in my life that are super interesting and unique. So we're gonna start off with one you might have heard of, pizza and a Lambrusco. So pizza is pizza, and a Lambrusco is like a type of sparkling wine that comes from Italy, a red sparkling wine that comes from Italy. And I love a Lambrusco with a pizza. I feel like they complement each other so well. Also, another weird one, a Negroni in a pizza. I find like the dryness of the Negroni, even though I'm not like a super big gin, well, yeah, I'm not like a super big gin drinker. If I have a Negroni, I'll probably have it spagliato, which means with the sparkling wine. But again, another really interesting, surprising pairing. Like, it's the bitterness of the Negroni and the fruitiness of the Lambrusco, or the fruitiness and the citrusness of the pizza. It's like such a fun little interaction. So that one's really unique and interesting. Fried chicken and champagne is another one. The acidity of the bubbles cuts through the richness of the chicken if it is prepared flavorfully. So if you're going to Wingstop and you want to elevate your little Wingstop meal a little bit, go ahead and grab yourself a glass of champagne. So those two are like really fun pairings that I've had in my life that I want to share with y'all if you're thinking about experimenting or trying something new. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Before you go though, please let me know, what is your go-to drink? What is your favorite meal? And what do you usually pair it with? Please drop it in the comments and I will give you guys a personalized pairing if you are interested. So go ahead and just write them in the comments. I love this type of thing. I love finding unique and different pairings, and honestly, just different ways I can creatively make these calories worth it. So please put in the chat, what are your favorite wine pairings? What is your favorite food pairings? And if you don't even know one, throw in your favorite meal down in the comments. I will suggest a personalized pairing for you if you are interested in it. But yeah, that's it for now. Please like and subscribe. We are having a great time over here in Sommeliaide land. We have some really exciting content coming up for the rest of the month and the rest of the year, and I don't want you to miss it. So again, hit that subscribe button. It's right there. But in the interim, if you want to hang out with me a little bit longer, go ahead and click this video right here. It's right here. Yep, go ahead and click this video. It's a good time. You'll learn something new and it'll be so fun. But in the meantime, between time, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. But click the video though. Go ahead and click it. Yeah, do that.